Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. Today, we are going to be going through some excerpts from a Korean news broadcast, and this thing covers a lot of ground. It's going to be about tensions between the U.S. and Ukraine, the trade war heating up between the U.S. and China, and the increasingly cozy relationship between Russia and China. So you ready to get up to speed on current events in just a few minutes?
I am definitely ready. And I think it's really interesting how all of these issues we're going to be talking about today are all kind of connected. They seem really different at first glance, but they're all part of this one big puzzle.
Okay, well, let's start putting the pieces of that puzzle together. The Korean news broadcast talked about this recent meeting between Trump and Zelensky. It was supposed to be about finalizing some sort of mineral agreement and trying to figure out a path to peace in the war between Russia and Ukraine. But it sounds like it went off the rails pretty fast.
Yeah. The report mentioned a shouting match accusations from Trump about Zelensky being ungrateful. Zelensky just walking out of the meeting and even skipping lunch. It sounds more like something out of a reality TV show than a diplomatic meeting.
It really does. I mean, if we saw this in a movie, we'd probably think it was way too over the top.
Huh?
But this really happened. And it brings up some important questions about the relationship between the U.S. and Ukraine and how stable it really is.
It sounds like the main problem was that they both had different expectations about the meeting. The mineral deal would have given the U.S. access to some valuable resources in Ukraine, but Zelensky wanted the U.S. to promise to protect them more in exchange. And it seems like that was something that Trump wasn't willing to give.
And this isn't the first time Trump has said things about Zelensky that have caused controversy, right?
Yeah, you're right. He's called Zelensky a dictator without an election in the past, but then he later denied saying it. This kind of back and forth makes the whole relationship seem even less predictable.
So where did the U.S. and Ukraine go from here? Does the U.S. have a duty to step up and offer the kind of security guarantees that Zelensky's asking for?
That's the million-dollar question. It really gets to the heart of what the U.S. role is in the world. We have to decide how important our own interests are compared to supporting our allies. And that can be a really hard decision.
And while we're talking about countries shifting their alliances, the news also covered the trade war that's still going on between the U.S. and China. It doesn't seem like they're any closer to resolving this.
Not at all, actually. It's getting worse. Trump just announced another 10% tariff on stuff coming in from China. And that's on top of the tariffs that were already in place. The reason he gave was that too much fentanyl is coming into the U.S. from China.
Wow, so this is actually the second time he's raised tariffs by 10% since he started in his second term. So now the total increase is a whopping 20%. I mean, could this be a sign that the U.S. is moving away from globalization altogether? Are we headed towards a future where countries focus more on making deals with their neighbors and trying to do everything themselves?
It's definitely possible. This kind of protectionism, where countries try to protect their own businesses, could end up splitting the global economy into smaller pieces. Countries might start focusing on building stronger relationships with allies in their own regions.
And what's China doing about all this? Are they giving in at all?
No way. They've threatened to retaliate, and they're saying that the U.S. is breaking the rules of the World Trade Organization. This is getting really tense, and neither side wants to back down first.
It's almost like they're stuck in this weird dance. One step forward, two steps back. And it feels like this is about more than just the economy. It feels like they're both fighting to be the most powerful country in the world.
Definitely. These trade wars aren't just about tariffs and products. They're about who gets to make the rules for how countries trade with each other, who controls all the technology and information, and in the end, it's about who has the most power on the world stage.
And while all of this is going on with China, don't forget about those tariffs that Trump is threatening to put on Mexico and Canada too. Remember, those are still on the table. He's really serious about using tariffs as a way to get other countries to do what he wants.
Yeah, that's right. It shows just how much U.S. trade policy has changed under Trump. He's not afraid to use tariffs as a weapon to get what he wants from other countries.
So with all of these trade wars going on, what could happen to the world's economy? I mean, what are the consequences of this approach to trade? You know the saying, when two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers.
That's actually a great analogy. This trade war and all the tariffs that might come with it could end up hurting the entire global economy. Prices could go up for people who buy stuff, supply chains could get messed up, and economic growth could slow down all around the world.
It's a lot to think about, right? We've got this tense meeting between leaders escalating trade wars and a whole lot of uncertainty. It feels like the world is constantly on edge.
You're not wrong. The world is changing really fast, and the old ways of doing things don't work anymore. We're in uncharted territory now. It's exciting, but also a little scary.
I agree. It feels like we're watching a movie and we know something big is about to happen, but we're not sure what. Speaking of big things happening, the Korean news broadcast also talked about how China and Russia are becoming closer and closer.
It's definitely something we should be paying attention to. This partnership between China and Russia has the potential to really shake things up in terms of who has power in the world.
So let's get into that. The news report said that Russia's top security guy just visited China, which seems like a pretty clear sign that they're becoming even closer allies. What's the history here? How did these two countries become such good buddies?
Their relationship has actually been getting stronger for years now, but it's really picked up speed since the war in Ukraine started. China has been helping Russia out a lot by giving them money and diplomatic support, basically helping them deal with all the sanctions that the West has put on them.
So it's like they're teaming up to challenge that world order where the U.S. has been calling the shots for so long.
Exactly. It's a move towards a world where power isn't just in the hands of one country, but shared between a few big players. We're seeing China getting more and more powerful, Russia making a comeback, and we might even see groups of countries in different regions becoming more important.
So what does this all mean for the world? Is this going to make things less stable and lead to more conflict? Or could it actually make the world more balanced and peaceful?
It's tough to say for sure. There are definitely risks involved. When you have all these powerful countries competing with each other, it could definitely lead to more tension and conflict.
It's almost like we're going back to the Cold War, where you had these different groups of countries facing off against each other. And there was always that threat of things escalating. But like you said earlier, the world is way more connected now than it was back then.
Yeah, right. Things are a lot more complicated now. For example, look at the U.S. and Russia. They're on opposite sides when it comes to the war in Ukraine. But at the same time, there are signs that their relationship might be improving a little bit. The news report mentioned that officials from both countries are meeting to talk about getting their relationship back to normal.
Could that be a way for the U.S. to try and weaken the China-Russia partnership?
Yeah.
Or do you think they're actually trying to make things better between them?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. The U.S. has always been good at playing different countries against each other to stay on top. But they also know that working with Russia on some issues like preventing nuclear weapons from spreading or fighting terrorism is good for everyone.
It's like a really complicated game of chess. Every move has the potential to change the whole game. And it's not just governments making these moves. It's all of us, too. Our choices matter.
That's a really important point. In a world where everything is so connected, the things that individuals and communities do can have a big impact even beyond their own little corner of the world. What we choose to buy the movements, we support the new technologies we create. It all plays a role in shaping the world.
So with all this uncertainty and change going on, what can the average person do to make sense of it all and find their place in the world?
The most important thing is to stay informed. Pay attention to what's happening in the world. Talk to people about these issues and be willing to change your mind when you learn new things. And remember, we're not just watching all of this happen.
Yeah.
We all have the power to make a difference.
That's a good point. It reminds us that we're not just passengers. We're all part of this global story, and we can help write the next chapter. Now, the news report also talked about the U.S. economy, and there were a few things that jumped out at me. So the January PCE price index ended up being 2.5%, which is down a little bit from December, which was 2.6%, but it's still higher than that 2% target that the Federal Reserve wants to see. And then there's the GDP, which grew at a rate of 2.3% in the fourth quarter. That's a bit slower than the previous quarter. So what does all this economic stuff actually mean for the average person?
Well, that PCE number being higher than what the Fed wants suggests that inflation might be hanging around longer than we'd like, which means the Fed could keep raising interest rates. And that could make it more expensive to borrow money for things like houses and cars.
So not really good news if you're thinking about buying a new house or car anytime soon. But even though the GDP growth has slowed down a bit, it's still growing, right?
Yeah.
That's got to be a good sign.
It is. It means the economy is still getting bigger, which is definitely positive. But that slower growth rate could be a sign that the trade war with China and those possible tariffs on Mexico and Canada are starting to have a negative impact.
Yeah, that is a little worrying, especially with all the other uncertainty in the world we've been talking about. So if we try to look at the big picture here with the U.S. and Ukraine, the trade wars, the whole China-Russia thing, and now this kind of mixed economic news, what do you think? Is it time to be optimistic or pessimistic?
It's tough to say. There are definitely some big challenges ahead, and things are changing so quickly in the world. But there are also opportunities for things to get better, for new ideas, and for countries to work together.
I guess it all comes down to what choices these world leaders make, right?
Yeah.
The decisions they make over the next few years will have a huge impact on everyone.
Exactly. And it's not just up to them. We all have a responsibility to stay informed, talk about these issues, and try to create the kind of future we want.
That's a great point. So as we wrap up this deep dive into what's going on in the world, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
I think the most important thing to remember is that everything is connected now more than ever. The problems we're facing are complicated, and there are no easy answers. But if we pay attention, talk to each other, and are willing to take some risks and look for opportunities, we can all work together to make the world a better place. A place that's fairer and more sustainable for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And with that, we're going to leave you with something to think about. As you go about your day, think about how all the things we've talked about today might affect your own life, your community, and the world around you. And ask yourself, what role do you want to play in shaping the future?